What's up, everyone? I'm James Lynch, and this is Early Look, the show where I take a look at an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be looking at the UFC 278 main event, which features welterweight champion Kamaru Usman taking on Leon Edwards in a rematch. But before I give you my preview and pick, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Those three things really help out this channel. And I'm posting content on here every single day, so you don't want to miss anything, right? That's the big thing. Okay, let's get into it. I did mention this is a rematch. I did mention this is the main event of UFC 278. What I didn't mention is that this is going to be taking place August 20th, so the time we're recording this next Saturday. And this is going to be taking place at the Vivint Arena in Salt Lake City, Utah. Boy, when I think of Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards, do I ever think of Salt Lake? No, I'm joking. It's, yeah, I guess they just needed to put this fight somewhere. No significance on either end. I guess Usman trains in Colorado now, so it's not too far away from Salt Lake. But yeah, main event, good fight. Glad to see it happen. Just, in terms of the implications of this fight, Leon Edwards has had, I think, some of the worst luck on the UFC roster in terms of getting opportunities. So glad to see this come to fruition. Let's look at the tail of the tape real quick, and then we'll go through both fighters. So Usman, you can see there, 35 years old, Leon Edwards 30, 6 feet tall to 6'2", 76-inch reach compared to 74 there for Kamaru Usman. And Leon Edwards, 21 record for Usman, 19-3 for Rocky Leon Edwards. Okay, we're going to look first at the current welterweight champion, Kamaru Usman. So you can see there, Kamaru Usman is 20-1, like I mentioned, 9 knockouts, 1 submission, and 10 decisions in his career. He's 35 years old. He's 6 feet tall with a 76-inch reach. So he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's the current UFC welterweight champion, like I mentioned, I think a couple times already. He also won season 21 of The Ultimate Fighter. And that's kind of notable, as was mentioned on the broadcast last Saturday, that him and his brother Muhammad are 2 brothers, I think the only brothers to ever win Ultimate Fighter contract or UFC contracts from The Ultimate Fighter. Usman is a BJJ brown belt, and he trains at both Onyx Sport and Elevation Fight Team. I also see here they have him listed at Killcliff. He's probably doing some training there as well. Didn't have an opportunity to interview Usman, so I'm not really sure exactly what training's going on, but we know that he has obviously linked up with Trevor Whitman since the Gilbert Burns fight, so that's paid dividends for him. So he's had 5 successful title defenses. That is Usman. He's the first Nigerian-born UFC champion. He's won Performance of the Night bonuses 4 times for his fights against Hayder Hassan, Rafael dos Anjos, Gilbert Burns, and Jorge Masvidal. He's got Fight of the Night 1 time with Colby Covington in their first fight. He's also got the latest finish in UFC welterweight history against Colby Covington in their first fight, and he has most consecutive wins in UFC welterweight history. He's also tied with 3 fighters for second most unanimous decision wins in UFC history with 10. So take that for what it's worth. Those are some of the accolades there for Usman. Now, Usman, like a lot of fighters when we do these early look previews, no amateur fights to speak of. He made his MMA debut in November of 2012, about a year after Leon Edwards made his pro debut. Didn't make his UFC debut until July of 2015, of course, getting that win over Hayder Hassan. And I remember that going into that fight, a lot of people were high on Hayder Hassan, and it was Usman who ended up getting it done. So that was impressive. He is 14-0 in the UFC. He's got 5 stoppage wins. Some of the notable wins here, and this is why they're starting to talk about Usman in the greatest of all time conversation, because of some of the notable wins he's had in his career. So the first Leon Edwards fight was back at UFC on Fox 17 back in December of 2015. Usman was just 5-1 at the time, taking on a 9-1 Leon Edwards, 10-1 Leon Edwards at the time. And yeah, so that was just the second UFC fight, was the fight against Leon Edwards, which is very interesting here. So yeah, that's a notable win for him, Leon Edwards. He also defeated Sean Strickland when he was fighting at welterweight. Also defeated Damian Maia, the former title challenger, in 2 weight classes. Rafael dos Anjos as well. Tyron Woodley, of course, the big fight, the title fight he had, where he completely dominated Woodley. If you remember that fight going in, I believe Usman was the underdog, and he went out there and absolutely took Woodley out of his element. And in fact, Woodley has not won a fight since then. So pretty crazy outcome there. And then obviously the 2 wins over Colby Covington, the first fight, which was a 5th round finish, and the second fight, which was the decision. We'll talk about those scorecards a little bit later. And then he also has wins over Jorge Masvidal twice, and Gilbert Burns, his former teammate. Some notable losses. Well, he hasn't had any. The one guy he did lose to was on the regional scene, kind of irrelevant there. Not many injuries in Usman's career either. That's one of the things we look at here. Just the first Sergio Moraes fight, he was supposed to fight back in May of 2016. He had an undisclosed injury there. And then I think people forget as well, the first Gilbert Burns fight that they were trying to put together was supposed to take place, actually second scheduled fight, I should say, was supposed to take place in December of 2020. Usman was still recovering from injury, so that fight didn't take place either. But for the most part, Usman's been very active. You look at it here, at least twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year is fighting, and doesn't get injured that much. So that's one of the pluses of his career. And one other thing you can mention as well, he hasn't really taken a lot of damage in his career either, which is a big plus. I mentioned close fights. The Covington fight, despite what Colby Covington will tell his fans and everything, that he won. No media members actually scored Colby Covington winning that fight. There were 3 media members who scored the fight a draw. I went back and looked. That was at UFC 268 in November. So there was 18 media members scoring the fight for Usman, 3 scoring it a draw, and a close fight. But again, Usman coming out on top in the rematch. So that's Kamaru Usman in a nutshell. Again, pretty impressive career here. Hasn't lost in the octagon. And then we didn't even talk about the wins over Graves and Steve Carl. Steve Carl actually had a lot of experience on the show before heading in there. I know he had fought in Bellator and World Series of Fighting. So that was pretty good to the fact that, he was able to defeat a guy like that on the Ultimate Fighter. So that was great. So that is Kamaru Usman. Again, not much to talk about here because he doesn't have any losses. And I think the stats there are pretty standard. Okay, let's get to Leon Edwards now. Rocky, 19-3 record. He's got 6 wins by knockout or TKO. He's got 3 submission victories and 10 decisions. He's 30 years old, but as you can see here at the time of recording this, he's actually going to be turning 31 on August 25th. He's 6'2" with the 74-inch reach, so he's 4 years younger than Usman, and he's going to have a 2-inch height advantage in this fight, but it's actually going to be Usman with the reach. Leon Edwards is southpaw. He's a former Bama welterweight champion, big promotion over there in the UK. He's a BJJ purple belt, trains at a Team Renegade BJJ, and he's the number 2 ranked welterweight. Leon Edwards has got performance of the night 1 time against Seth Baczynski, and he's got the 6th fastest finish in UFC history. People forget this. There was an 8-second finish on Seth Baczynski in that fight, and I believe that was the 2nd fastest knockout in UFC welterweight history as well. Masvidal is the first with the Ben Askren fight. I think Leon was 2nd or 3rd. I'd have to go back and double check that, but still, people forget that Leon Edwards had an 8-second win. Like when I say that, people are like, what are you talking about? Leon Edwards made his amateur debut in March of 2011. Made his professional debut, as you can see here, in June of 2011, so not that much longer after, and didn't make his UFC debut until November of 2014. So you see there, fighting Claudio Silva, a fight that we'll talk about in 1 second here. Leon Edwards is 11-2 in the UFC. He's got 3 stoppage wins. Some of his notable wins include Vicente Luque. Albert Tumanov at the time was a good win, especially since he finished him, and Tumanov was 16-3 at the time. He also defeated Cowboy Cerrone. Also defeated Gunnar Nelson, also defeated Rafael dos Anjos, the former lightweight champion. And, the Diaz fight it's only notable because it's Diaz, but I mean, honestly, that win, if anything, that win probably hurt his stock because people were fixated on the fact that Diaz had rocked Leon Edwards in the 5th round of that fight, which that probably shouldn't have even been a 5th round fight, considering there were other notable welterweight matchups that were only 3 rounds, but that's a discussion for another day. Some notable losses that he's had, Leon Edwards, obviously losing to Claudio Silva in his debut. You'll see it was a split. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then the only other loss he's had is to Usman. So as much as people talk about Leon Edwards, he's got a pretty impressive record in the UFC, going 11-2. That's very good. Oh yeah, I have it in my notes here. Leon Edwards did get the 2nd fastest KO in welterweight history. Leon Edwards also started his career at 185. His first 2 fights, these were middleweight fights, if you can see here. Oh, sorry. They have it listed as a welterweight fight. I'm pretty sure it was middleweight though. But he was middleweight in one of his other fights. Anyways, point I'm getting at is that Leon has competed at middleweight before. That's kind of what I was getting at. Okay, let's get to the Claudio Silva fight. You'll see he lost it by split decision. Check this out. That was back at UFC Fight Night 56, November 2014. Again, Leon Edwards' debut. 2 media members scored the fight for Claudio Silva. 1 scored it a draw. 9 scored it for Leon Edwards. So realistically, and then his only other loss outside of Usman was a DQ loss due to an illegal knee. So realistically, if that Silva fight goes the other way, if that DQ doesn't happen and he ends up getting the win there, we could be talking about Leon Edwards only really having 1 loss, right? So again, I know we can say that about a lot of fighters, but just wanted to point out some context here when you're like, oh, Edwards has lost 3 times. Well, one of those losses was pretty legit against Usman. The other 2, not so much. So there we go. Okay, let's get to the odds right now. As you can see, we have, where are we? Let's find the odds right now. A lot of books having different lines. You're seeing about Usman almost being about a 4-1 favorite, which I get because Usman's looked outstanding. Edwards has not competed that much in his career as well. Oh, sorry, I missed a couple things here. Let me just get back to that before we get to the odds. Sorry, usually I go in sequence. I forgot to do that. Layoffs. Leon has had plenty of layoffs. So early in his career, obviously you see here, right? He fights Silva, and then he fights Seth Baczynski shortly after that. Then he fights again in 2015. 3 fights in 2015. 2016 twice, 2017 twice, 2018 twice, 2019 twice. This is where there's a big drop off. So after this, you look at all the cancellations here. This is what I talked about being one of the most cursed guys ever. Supposed to fight Woodley at UFC London, events canceled due to the coronavirus. Can't leave the country. Edwards tests positive for COVID. He was supposed to fight Chimaev back in December. They rescheduled the fight. Chimaev also got COVID. He's recovering from that. And then he was supposed to fight again against Chimaev Chimaev still having COVID issues. He fights Bilal Muhammad in a fight that I thought he was looking pretty good in early on. Ends in an eye poke. Bad luck again. Supposed to fight Nate Diaz in May. Diaz has an injury. They delay it till June. He beats Diaz. Everyone's fixated on the 5th round, not him, winning the majority of the fight. And then you're supposed to fight Jorge Masvidal in December. Masvidal gets an injury. So again, some big gaps there. So I actually went back and looked. The layoff from Rafael dos Anjos to Nate Diaz was a 602-day layoff. That's crazy if you think how long that's been. Then going from Diaz to this fight, there's a 434-day layoff. So again, that does not lean very well to the Leon side of things because of the fact that he's been fairly inactive. You look at Usman here, far more active. Anyways, now let's get to the odds. That's what I was going to talk about. Also, Leon did not have any significant injuries, kind of like Usman. So see it there. Usman about a 4-1 favorite. Which way am I going in this one? You have to go Kamaru Usman in this fight. I just think that's the way you got to go in this fight because again, there's a couple things with Usman. Number one, we've seen him get better since switching camps, since working with Trevor Whitman. We've seen him leveling up, like him finishing Gilbert Burns, him finishing Masvidal, who's an extremely durable guy at 170. Very, very, very impressive. On top of that, Colby Covington, I think, is the number one welterweight, not named Kamaru Usman. I mean, maybe you could say Chimaev's in there too, but still, he beat Covington twice. Like, if there's no Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington is probably the welterweight champion unless he fights Chimaev. Again, it's Chimaev, Covington, they're kind of in the same stratosphere, so to speak. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. But all these wins outside of Masvidal, I mean, we can erase the 2 Masvidal fights because I think Leon Edwards would beat Masvidal, no problem. But Covington, 2 Covington wins, a Burns win, Woodley, back when Woodley was Woodley, RDA, Maia, like these are all good wins. Even Strickland, that win has aged pretty well considering what Strickland has done since then. Yeah, these are all quality wins. And nothing against Leon. Again, a lot of people rag on Leon's level of opposition. It's not his fault that he had all these cancellations. It's also not his fault that these guys were actually considered good at the time. Like Brian Barberena was a good win. Luque is a good win. Cerrone, big name there. RDA looked decent at some point at welterweight. Remember him beating Kevin Lee, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at here. So the 2 knocks on Leon obviously is the inactivity and the fact that I think that Leon, he's winning a lot of his fights, but he's not winning impressively. Like we haven't seen that killer instinct Leon basically since the Seth Dujinski fight in terms of him getting like an impressive finish. Like we just don't see him finishing his opponents. So that's where it's like, what does he bring to the table that Usman hasn't seen? I just don't think there's anything there. With Usman, though, he's getting better and better. He can always go to his wrestling in his back pocket. That's how he won the first fight, was just him out wrestling Leon Edwards. Now he's got the added arsenal of a stand-up where we're seeing him finish guys like Masvidal, like Burns. So there's that. Usman, we know that, he's getting up there in age. Like I said, he is a little bit older. At some point, he'll slow down. But I think right now is not the time. I think Usman, again, he took this fight because he knew that he'd be feeling pretty good in this one. And supposedly he had an injury going into the second Covington fight and still won. So I think, again, that leads more towards Usman winning. Now, I think the big question is, will Usman finish Leon Edwards? I think it's possible. We did see Nate Diaz rock Leon Edwards in their fight. Wasn't able to finish it. I feel like Usman could be the guy to potentially finish it. But you'll notice that was a 5th round sort of issue with Diaz and Edwards. I could see this being late as well too. I don't think you're going to see an early finish from Kamaru Usman. I think Leon's a much better fighter than Masvidal is. I don't think he gets clipped. He doesn't seem like a guy who gets hit very often in some of his fights. So I think if Usman finishes, it's going to be later, maybe like 4th or 5th round if he gets it done. But yeah, you got to pick Usman here. The odds, they're very high. Maybe you look at that Usman by decision prop just in case it does go the distance. We're seeing some odds here right now. Usman wins by decision -120. It's possible. And again, you got to look at the fact that Edwards has not been finished in his career at all. So that's another reason to maybe lean the decision prop there. But either way, this is Usman's fight to lose. He has everything behind him right now. He's got a lot of momentum. And yeah, I just think he's right now, as far as the 2 fighters go, Usman's the better guy. So my pick's going to be Kamaru Usman by decision. Although maybe you look at those later props, like 4th or 5th round of Usman getting the win there. Like we did last week with Jamal Hill, right? Maybe you take those later props and see, because again, he's fighting a very durable guy in Leon Edwards. So I don't know what you guys think in the comment section below. Which way are you leaning here? Are you going Usman? Are you going Edwards? I mean, again, the betting odds, if you feel like Edwards has a shot, it might be worth it to take a stab here, but I really think Usman wins this. To me, it's his fight to lose. I think he gets it done. So follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Once again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you won't miss any updates on this channel. And if there's any other notable fights that you guys want me to preview that are coming up, let me know. Trust me, I know you guys are going to say UFC 280. There's a ton of fights on there. I will get to all those big fights there. Trust me, there's so many fights on there that I'm going to preview. We'll definitely start getting some of those done starting next week. But for now, wanted to preview this fight because it is very important. Big fight for the welterweight division, and it is taking place next Saturday. So I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time and appreciate you tuning in.